So let's see, time being 4:02. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Roads and Right of Ways Committee meeting Tuesday, February 21st, 2023. We're meeting via Zoom as allowed by the state of Massachusetts. The committee will conduct roll call and all votes. Zoom participants are asked to identify themselves. Your name will be noted on the screen under your Zoom connection. All Zoom participants are asked to mute the device unless addressing the committee. And that being said, we'll conduct a roll call, and both Phil Smith and Rob Randy are going to be unable to attend. So Alan Reinhardt.
Here.
Lee Saperstein.
Here.
Rick Atherton.
Here.
Nat Lowell.
Here.
Ed Gillum.
Here.
And Snooky is absent. Okay, thank you. First order of business is approval of minutes of January 17th, 2023. We have a motion to accept those, and then if anybody has any corrections. So motion to accept
Motion to accept.
by Alan, a second by Nat.
I didn't second, but I'll second it.
Oh, you did. We had
Oh,
a-
okay.
you seconded, yeah.
Okay.
Any discussion on Lee's superb minutes? Hearing none, all in favor by roll call. Alan Reinhardt,
Aye.
Lee Saperstein,
Aye.
Rick Atherton,
Aye.
Nat Lowell,
Aye.
Ed Gillum,
Aye.
chair says aye. Thank you very much. Next order of business. 10. You want to go ahead on your two updates, Franklin Street and Stone Alley?
Right. With respect to Franklin Street, I went through and found the file. This goes back to 2014 when the issues started with respect to the nature of this as a private road. The file indicates that a significant amount of work was supposed to be done in terms of being able to make a determination relative to it being a private road and what needs to be done with respect to it. There has been virtually nothing done, and this is not a priority for the town at this point in time. So this is not something that the town administration intends to spend time or energy or resources on at this point in time. So that's the update with respect to that.
Okay, anybody have any comments? Alan? From the commission's point of view, Historic Cemetery Commission?
Yeah, I guess it's a work in progress.
Okay. Thanks, Ken, on that one. And on Stone Alley?
On Stone Alley, I think that you and I talked earlier, and you copy of the warrant article that we've put into the town meeting to address the issue of Stone Alley. What was really, Andrew and I spent a lot of time figuring out how to deal with this, because the concern was that if we in fact sort of took ownership of Stone Alley, it created a major problem for us in terms of being able to be responsible for, because we have no ability to really take care of this and indicate how to monitor it. So what we came up with was to take the easement over it, which in fact made sure that we had access to Stone Alley, and then we left it in the hands of the abutters to be able to take care of the painting it. So what we've done is we have the ability for ourselves and anybody in the town to go up and down Stone Alley, but the fact is that the abutters have to take care of it. So the issue there was to be able to deal with access, but also be able to make sure that we didn't take on a responsibility that we wouldn't be able to manage.
Okay, and just for a point of clarification, Ken, if they let that go to rack and ruin, that's just the end of it, or
Well,
what?
no, the point is that we're gonna, because of the fact that we have the easement access, in fact, we can make sure that they have to make sure that available and workable. That's
Okay.
the whole idea was for us to be able to make sure that it's there and monitor it to make sure that it stays open. But we couldn't take on the responsibility of ownership.
Okay, anybody have any questions? Ed?
So it's not only a question of maintenance, but liability, obviously. So like Bill was alluding to, if it's not maintained, what is the stick with the abutters rather than? I mean, how do we get it, make sure it is maintained? And
Well,
so,
the point is that because we have the easement over it, we have the ability to, in fact, make sure that they allow that our easement is usable and passable. So that comes with the territory.
okay, I just didn't know what the mechanism for enforcing the maintenance of it was. That's all.
Yeah.
Probably not. Probably, I think I know the answer, but there we go.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Ken? He's got another meeting to go to. All right, thanks, Ken.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Ken.
Next up is Sconset Bluff Walk Subcommittee Review Update. I don't know which one of you gentlemen would like to take the helm here, but go right ahead.
I think Ed got it pretty well figured out.
All right, with Nat's seal of approval and Alan's acquiescence, we just last night, we've solo gone out there, but we went for a site walk together just last evening. So it's pretty fresh, just in our mind right now. We walked the whole thing and we came back on the Baxter Road side as well. When you go back to the original list of recommended rules, I mean, one thing we were thinking is that it should match what's down at Codfish Park with the playground, and that was 7:30 to sunset. Well, when you refer back to the rules that were originally recommended, it says footpath open from 7:30 to sunset year round. Now, obviously sunset varies, but you know, it is what it is. There's a question of maintenance. They're doing a pretty good job of maintaining it. There's one or two places where it could be tuned up a little bit in terms of a low hanging limb, for instance. There's a couple spots that probably could be brushed up, but the DPW is doing a pretty good job out there, I think. Then you get to the question of signage for rules. And this is where it gets sticky a little bit, because I don't think you want to turn it into a Disney World attraction by having a sign that alerts people to know that, oh, there it is, let's go look for it. I think the cat's out of the bag. I think it's no longer kind of a Sconset secret anymore, but you need to have some posting of rules there so people know the rules of the road. I mean, before you can enforce something, you got to, the public's got to know what you're trying to enforce. So there was some talk of figuring out some sort of subtle signs, and not giant signs that sometimes the town puts around, but subtle signs at access points on either end, and on some of the main kind of perpendicular access points, maybe Rosalie, maybe Emily, in a few places, like maybe down toward the very end, which used to be the Berry access, that will actually tell you that, no jogging, no bicycles, no littering, no loitering, no drinking, etc. No pets off leash. And no pets off leash, that's, then you get to the point of enforcement. Now that's where it gets a little more difficult. As far as enforcement, the town, through some of these tour groups, their licensing of some of these tour groups, they could maybe use a little bit of a stick to let them know that, because one of the things is there's no commercial use of any kind, including walking tours. Especially ones for a fee. Now, how you enforce these things, part of the problem going on here is that we have more people there, period. We probably have, 10% of the people didn't obey the rules before, but now we have many more people, and that 10% is many more people now. It's also a tit for tat a little bit, because I think a lot of it's got to include an education piece, not only for the public, but also for the homeowners along the bluff, and some of the new homeowners are the ones that in the last 10 years are new. Because we are noticing encroachments by some of these homeowners to pretty much enforce, and there's a couple of flagrant areas, one in particular, but I'm not going to address that right now, where homeowners have done their own thing and decided to enforce the path in the way they saw fit for their property. One thing screening it on your own land, the other thing going into the path and playing around with the direction of the path. But I think that this is, we're working on it. In other words, we've gone over this list. I think we've come up with, a reinforcement of a lot of the original ideas. The enforcement, I guess there's the tour group bit, and then there is the, how do we get the general public that's going down the path to know what the rules are? I'd be very interested to know, because all the properties along the bluff, they're different. I mean, some have vegetation, some have done their own thing over the years, some have little, shells on the ground that are Nantucket grandchildren did. Some of them are wide open lawns. I'd be very interested to know where the complaints have come from, so we can address perhaps those areas where the complaints have come from. Like, let's say if it's a property is in the 50s or in the 30s or wherever it may be. That way we can kind of maybe specifically on a case-by-case basis, be able to figure out what works best for that property owner, perhaps, and still, ensuring the public right to the, to the path itself. So I guess that's where we are. Alan or Nat, I'll defer to you guys to come up with, other observations that you might have seen.
Go ahead, Alan. I just got a couple of things that we talked about that Ed did a great job remembering and writing stuff down.
Right. No, I agree. I think Ed covered all the things we talked about on our walk yesterday on the bluff. The real key is enforcement. Who's going to enforce whatever regulations are posted there? I think the town has notified all the tour operators who used to do walks and so on. I know they contacted, I think there were 2 or 3 individuals or whatever to do it, and they notified them that there's to be no commercial use, and they identified the tours as a commercial use. Beyond that, there's not much more I have to add to what Ed has already said. There are one or two encroachments. One of them is a pretty major one that we'll need to address, but other than that, I'm not a believer in signs other than if there's a small, discrete sign or something. Most people who are going to act inappropriately aren't going to pay any attention to the signs anyway. So I think it would be a good idea to do a simple sign, as Ed suggested, as a reminder that that anyone who's using this public way has a responsibility to not be a nuisance to the neighborhood that they're going through. And I guess the real test is how do we, how do you enforce something like that?
Yeah.
Nat?
Hey, Ed, you got your hand up, Ed. So go ahead. I just got a few things. That's all.
I wanted to add a piece of comment. One piece we did notice, and that I think would be handy to figure out on the bluff path itself is that people walking dogs on the leash, which is is allowed. We found a lot of the the litter, the green little litter things full of poop that actually were thrown into the bushes or put on the side of the path. I think if we could come up with I don't know, I know they have one at Coffin Park. They have one down at Children's Beach. They're kind of big, but there must be a smaller, if we could have like at some midway point down through there, maybe, where one of the paper roads or otherwise comes across, if we could have one of those kind of biodegradable, like, I don't mean that the DPW has to come out and actually empty the thing regularly, but those biodegradable kind of trash cans for something like the dog litter, because I think that's becoming a problem all over Nantucket, not just this path, but it's a long path and a lot of these people are not going to carry the poop the way to the end of the path. So it's just, I guess it's bad human nature, unfortunately. That was one. And then today I actually observed an article in the front page of the Boston Globe that similar issues, erosion and public use for the cliff walk down in Newport, Rhode Island are coming under question. So I guess we're not the only people that are dealing with issues like this in terms of erosion or public access in front of, substantial real estate property. That's all I have to comment on.
Matt?
So, yeah, I just want to add a couple things that we talked about. The staggered signage. Ed, did you allude to that?
I did, like at some of the perpendicular access points, but not on Baxter at all. So
right. That's what I wanted to just make sure everyone understands about what we decided. So, not to kind of need to go back to the old days in the 21st century somehow over time here and try to keep it from being popular more than it already is, and maybe it'll sort of calm down a little bit. But we were thinking that the signage with the new language and maybe the existing language added, new language added to the existing language to be where the flush markers for the ways are. So in other words, have the flush marker, which we already have, but there's a couple more that need to be done, and have the signage about the path in the same area, whether it be on the other side or it doesn't matter where it is. It's just in that same area where the way comes through. So that was something that we were sort of talking about multiple times yesterday, and I think that's a really good, plan. Educating the property owners to the historic significance of this. A lot of these properties change hands. I was actually surprised Ed had more knowledge than I did with some of these places. I couldn't believe it. Like, he knows what's going on sort of in the, recent history than I do. And I think that, sort of goes with this enforcement discussion and trying to figure out a balance between the property owner's rights, the public's rights, and not trying to bring too much attention to this place. We wanted to sort of go back to a sort of what it used to be in today's thinking, if that makes sense. And I think that having the owners understand, like, sort of the unwritten and the written rules about this incredible historic gift that we got before we even knew we had it, and I think that that's a big part of this. And of course, that one encroachment that Alan talked about, I guess we'll talk about that another time or something, but we came up with the answer to that pretty well. It's definitely more than the typical encroachment. That sort of, most of them have something which is really not a problem. And then that one big tree branch, Ed. I mean, that's unbelievable, actually. You could get knocked unconscious there in the dark. But the 7:30 thing, Bill, is, that was in the old rules, and Ed looked up which is interesting. We did that, what was, that must have been when Joe was working on some of that stuff, Alan, I think. But I'm not sure. Joe Marklinger, but, you know, 7:30, I mean, I'm fine with 7:30. I don't know what everyone thinks about that, but like, you want to have the property owners have a chance to, you know, wake up and start making their breakfast a little bit, I think, because you can't say dusk, dawn, you know, sunrise rather, because sunrise is pretty early, you know, and you want to try to have some kind of a sort of a voluntary type of rule that makes sense in there. 7:30, I think, makes sense in the summertime, because we're really talking about summer.
So before I take questions from the public, the vast public, which is Lynn, let me just recap what I believe the subcommittee has reported, and if I have that correct, and then we can supplement from the public. And so if I understand it correctly, I think the next step going forward from as far as the subcommittee's report would be to draft up possible new sign verbiage so we can get that, so we can look at it succinctly and say, okay, instead of what about this, what about this, this is it. Points 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever it is. Follow up with identifying installation of this new signage in the old locations, plus the new locations, the new access points like Nat referred to. Also, and I think this next one will be part of Lynn's discussion, and that's identify possible enforcement process. And then a separate item for the committee in general is going to be following up on encroachment. And when we're talking about the signage, one of the things that I noticed last year walking there is that the property owners have not taken advantage of the possibility, a couple have, but most have not. And that's putting up a sign where there is no public way from the bluff to Baxter, but it looks like it is because it's a visual straight shot. And a couple of the abutters there have actually put up a sign and said, not a public access point or whatever. And certainly if I lived there, I would be doing that just so I could say, well, I've done everything I could. But anyhow, is that basically sum up what the subcommittee has said? Ed? You're muted. You're muted, Ed. Hello, you're muted.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
Yes, that's basically correct. The one thing that I want to read off really quickly with your permission, just because Lynn may not know what we were actually agreed to at 10, 11 years ago when this, can I read off the do's and don'ts just so we're on the same page with these do's
Sure,
and
go
don'ts?
ahead.
Okay, the original list of recommended rules was do's was walk. Foot bath open from 7:30 a.m. to sunset year round. There was an eyes eastward concept, encourage viewing of seascape and not into homes, which that's about is enforceable. That's not enforceable at all. People can look both ways. But then don'ts, no commercial use of any kind, including walking tours for a fee, no jogging, no bicycles. It did have no use of cell phones, which I think is an antiquated one. Well, I think we can get rid of that one. No loitering, and the definition of loitering, you know, is vague a bit. No entrance to private property, absolutely. No littering, absolutely. No picnicking, no pets off leash, absolutely. No drinking. So that was a list of do's and don'ts that we came up with. And I, you know, if Lynn has other do's and don'ts that, you know, some of the people might want, we'd be happy to consider and maybe add them to the list. I don't know.
Okay. All right, thanks, Lynn.
Hi. Thank you for taking a walk, the three of you, and reacquainting yourself with what is the most highly populated place in Sconset from June through October.
Hey, Lynn, just just because it's recorded, and so for future viewing, just identify who and what you're representing.
Oh, of course. Lynn Filipski, the president of the Siasconset Civic Association.
Thank you.
We have responsibility for the Bluff Walk in conjunction with the town. And I am well aware of, I've read all the reports from 10 years ago. Bob Felch of Sconset sat on this committee, and I've reviewed all of this with him. We've looked at every sign possible that was considered but not entered. We also looked at the legal standing of how the path can be open, and legally, there's a reason why they said dawn to dusk, but in this case, there are parts of the path that don't even exist due to erosion, and we no longer go to the lighthouse, and we may no longer be able to go as far as Bayberry as time goes on. And so for our sign, and I've circulated this before, part of the things that are the most disturbing for neighbors, and I will argue that the neighbors are well aware that they share this space. Newer neighbors are well aware. They're not enjoying it because in the 10 years they've lived there, the population has changed so much due to the tourism board and every magazine promoting this. So it's beyond control. This is, the top 5 things to do on Nantucket, unfortunately. So it's no longer this quiet path. It's lovely in the winter, but it is not lovely in the summer. So what we're trying to also educate people is the impact of humans on the path. And yes, that includes your dog bags thrown in the bushes, but it's the fragility of the path due to the glacial material that is prone to erosion from water and storms. And so it is an opportunity for us to educate people on what coastal erosion can do. And this is all on our website for members and non-members to look at. What is the history of the bluff? Why was it important? And what did William Flagg do? But for the typical tourist walking through, we distilled the rules down to, please be considerate of neighbors' privacy and be quiet as you walk the path. Turn off your cell phone. No running or wheeled vehicles, because we'll see strollers. I've seen a wheelchair try and go on the path. So it's beyond bicycles. Dogs must be on a leash. And here I think it's kind of important that it's never been covered. Native vegetation includes poison ivy, and watch for ticks, so dress appropriately. The only person who was a problem in terms of tourists and bringing them out to Sconset is, I'm going to butcher her name, is it Avi or Ari, who circumvented some of these rules for quite a long time. And her policy is she drops them off at the market, they go and walk the path, and then she retrieves them higher up or waits for them to come back. So I've never seen a tour group go. I've seen huge family groups go as an excursion. And so you can't control, you have 6 children or 2 children. This is the nature of the path. It's so public, it's beyond that.
Lynn, if I may, this is Lee Saperstein, just very quickly. The person you're speaking of is ARA, A-R-A, Charter, C-H-A-R-D-E-R.
Thank you.
I'm not sure whether or not she's still in business.
Well, I know she lost her license last summer and she had someone else driving the van while she sat next to them.
Okay.
So I think she finagled a way to keep her business going, but she could no longer drive the van for a period of time. I think she'd had either an accident or a police ticket. So for us, it's the fragility of the path. It's the nature of respecting the path and trying to be quieter, because yes, the access points, that would be helpful to really identify them. They're not all identified as you're walking the path, that this is an exit point, like the the house towards the south end has a double lot, and so people will walk straight across that lot because it looks like open land. Other homeowners have figured out, they've surveyed their property, put in their bushes in a line to obstruct anyone walking off on a non-public place. And that is kind of the only defense that they can have. And Bill was very good at emphasizing it must be a legal place to put your bushes, not on the path. But of course, the path does not work in a linear, obvious fashion. It curves, it comes around. In some places, a house, you're 20 feet from their porch. So that's a little tricky too. So there's a point where you think with erosion, the path already disappeared a long time ago, but it just keeps marching inward depending on where the erosion has occurred. So I think there needs to be a little bit of consideration to what the village is dealing with, and they need the support as much as possible to protect something this fragile and meaningful to the entire island. So I appreciate the signs that are there at the top and the bottom of the path, although now the rules are not obvious to anyone. It's too much of fluffy history. And we can come up with a QR code that if someone's really interested in learning, they could scan their phone and read it. But the rules, if it was just the rules and a very discreet sign, it would be very helpful, I think. There are always going to be people who disregard them. And sadly, a lot of them are people who actually live on Nantucket who will tell you, I don't care, I live here. As if this is their right to do and say what they choose at any time. So, this is the nature of society sometimes these days, but we're just trying to create a balance that we show off the beauty of the village and we encourage the use without making it a 700 person a day experience. Does anyone have any questions for me? All right, I thank you for your time.
Before you
Thank
go-
you, Lynn, very much.
Yes, definitely.
This is
Before you
you've got a good handle on this, I think. Everything you said was balanced. This is something that, I mean, I didn't know about, well, I knew about some of the tour stuff, but I think that can be handled. As
Mhm.
far as the natural attraction versus I didn't realize we were advertising it. Like, where is it advertised? Do we do that from the chamber? No.
No.
Not anymore, but it's been picked up. I actually think a great article in the Inky would be helpful to go through the history and how to protect a resource. I think some public relations work, I've talked to people on the town committee who are very well aware of not to advertise it and passed it on to the Chamber of Commerce. But the horse has been out of the barn for a very long time, and
Yeah.
it picked up in Cape Cod magazine, and it's just all over the place.
The other thing is, if you just go on the web and say interesting things to do in Nantucket, because it's out there in the internet, it's still accessible, even if it went away tomorrow. So let me ask you this, Lynn. I know you submitted some samples previously, but what I would request is that you redo that, send it to us so we can include it in the draft look that we're looking at for signage, the verbiage of that. So we can compare to make sure if we can incorporate your suggestions.
Okay,
Your idea about the code, a lot of places are doing that now, and so one of the questions that would be asked if that was included is where that info is going to live, who's going to maintain it or whatever, because I don't think the town would do that. So if that's part of the suggestion for the signage, I would I would suggest a note at the bottom that would say, this is what our thoughts are and whatever. And then the other thing is, when you talked previously, you mentioned something about your association had ideas about ways or possibilities to monitor or help with enforcement. And so you've mentioned that, verbally, but I would suggest that you put that idea along in the memo so that that can be talked about formally as a possibility submitted by your group, as opposed to just, well, Lynn said this or Lynn said that.
Okay,
All right, so Lee's got his hand up. Lee?
Yes, with respect to the QR code, we already have a link to the Sconset Bluff report on our webpage. It would be very easy to have to expand that link to include guidance on use of the walk, so that the QR code would relate back to something we control through roads and right of way. And I strongly suggest that one, we do it, we accommodate, and that two, it go onto our website.
Lee, I'd be happy to send all of you a copy of what is on our website that talks about the history, and it's only 4 paragraphs. You're trying to find something that is readable, and I'm not sure everyone would read your full report, but I think the Roads and Right-of-Way Committee certainly should control the content. If you like the content that we are using, by all means, adopt it or edit it. Then I think, we always have information on our website on various parts of the village, so we would continue to have that there as well.
Okay. All right, thank you, Lynn.
All right,
Anybody have
thank
any
you.
questions? Okay,
All right.
good night. Next up is, I sent out a transportation report from Patrick Reed, which was his message to the town about the status of where different projects were. So there's not much for us to comment on, other than, this is the state of where things are. And then given the fact that the DPW has, I won't say they're rudderless, but they've got to yet again find another replacement for Stephen. Anyway, so that's going to delay things. Lee?
Bill, my question is whether it's our duty to include that report in our minutes, or simply allude to a place where it can be found, namely under, presumably it's in plus somewhere.
Well, it's actually in the packet that I sent out.
Oh, I know that.
So, I mean, we've actually, my point is, I guess
Yeah, but it's a multiple page document.
Yep.
Do we want it in our minutes, or do we want just a simple URL link to where it appears on the town's website?
I think that's preferable.
Yeah, okay, gotcha.
Yeah. Anybody else have any thoughts on that? When you look at that report, it's just mind-boggling how many things are hanging out there, and I think
Well, the worst part, Bill, is if they don't get done, we don't get grants from the state or get included in some of their
Right.
funding.
yeah. Okay. The next item, I just wanted everybody to see the second batch of correspondence that came in from pro and con to the possible bike path to Wauwinet. I wanted to make sure that all the members saw it, and that I sent acknowledgement to all of the folks that submitted it. so that, number one, they realized that the committee did look at it. And then number two, in the reply back to them, I suggested that they sign up for the alerts, which I would say most of them that replied back that they had done so that they could get notices of when the item was going to be up in front of different boards. So anyway, that's, I wasn't really expecting a lot of chatter about that, but just I wanted to make sure that everybody got it.
Once again, Bill, question on inclusion in the minutes.
I don't think I just think we acknowledged.
Received and reviewed.
Yeah.
Okay.
The next, anybody have any questions on that or comments? I'll square it away.
Bill, yeah,
Yeah.
just a quick comment. I was on the chain of emails, and I think at last count, there were well over 20 different emails that came in, both pro and con. Most of the con ones, or the ones against it, came from some of the residents who live out in Wauwinet. Most of the other ones are from residents who live somewhere along that path there. It is a dangerous section, but it's, as far as our role, the role of the Roads and Right-of-Way Committee, at this point, I don't think there is anything for us to weigh in on the path. It is clearly designed for safety because anyone who's driven that road, particularly all the way out to Wauwinet, knows how treacherous that can be, particularly when there are groups of bicycles, probably from the Wauwinet, that are coming up and down the road and so on.
Yeah, that's what I told the folks that both for and against, that it was nice that they were starting to be aware of what was going on. They needed to pay attention because you need to be aware of what's going on in the neighborhood. And at some point, our group will be weighing in, but it's way premature for them to be coming to us for trying to give input because we just aren't dealing with it at this point.
Right. There is an article on the warrant, town meeting warrant, they're going to be discussing this May.
It's one thing seems pretty evident in the pro letters. I think the town is getting a heads up of the number of possibilities where they're going to be able to get easements across land for no cost. And set back off the road so that it's not going to be like sections of the Matticat bike path where, people are praying that that white paint is going to keep an SUV from running them over. So, so anyway, I thought that was just an interesting sidebar. Nat?
But yeah, Bill, good point on the Matticat. That was kind of like in the back of my mind. So the other day, if you ever see me do this stuff, you guys will laugh. I get my tape measure out, start measuring things side of the road. So the width of pavement to edge of pavement on Wauwinet Road is between 18 and a half and 19 feet wide. If anybody thinks that that's a safe width is an idiot, okay? But that's what we like. So, okay, let's just say we want to keep that road, heavily traveled road, that narrow. Okay, you got to have a separated bike path. Like, I mean, I don't want bike lanes. Okay, I used to think that might be the answer to some of these roads, but it's not, because it's not what we want here. It's not attractive. It's, these bike paths is one of the reasons people come here. And this isn't the bluff path where we want to kind of keep people from using it. We want people using their bikes on the bike paths. So, other than Quidnet Road and New Lane, I mean, these three roads are the most dangerous roads on the island, in my opinion. Okay. I don't even know how someone could even come up with any reason to be against this at all. I can't fathom it, but that's the time we
Well,
live in.
and unfortunately, you know, if the folks go to the state, and for relief or whatever, they're in for a rude awakening, because the state actually, on Route 1, they put a bike path in. And what it is just a lane on Route 1
Yeah,
with a picture of a bicycle, which it might as well have a person's silhouette laid out there, because the Mack truck will take them out. And that's the prescribed way of bike paths. And what I think is even scarier than that is in California now, where that sort of bike path is all over the place. California actually passed a law that you have to keep 3 or 4 feet separation between the bicycle rider and you. So when you have a very narrow road and there's a bike path there, you actually are supposed to cross over at sometimes into the other lane, because if you don't, you violate the bike path rule. So it's just nuts. And whenever you can have the separation, you know, it's the best thing. So it's going to be a Donnybrook going forward for sure. But what's new in Nantucket? Any more on the bike path? Or what the heck was that under? Oh yeah, correspondence. So a quick update on the public way monument project. I heard back from the DPW office administrator, who was covering for Stephen at the time. She sent an update that they have not found any of the monuments that eluded Alan when he was on his search. And because of the unknown time frame when they went someplace else to live, they can't go back and look at any tapes from the security system, because they don't have a narrower enough window of opportunity to go look. So where they've gone is unknown. So at this point, excuse me, what we have is what we have for stock. We don't have any flat ones. So I think, you know, twofold. One is figure out what we do about getting the flat stock. And then 2, are there any places where the vertical stock could go in and knock off a couple of places off the list? So I don't know if the Public Way Monument Project folks, which is Lee, Allen, and Snooky, if you guys want to consider that or come up with a recommendation or research where we can get the flat ones. Ed, you're muted.
Oh, you haven't called on me to speak, so I didn't unmute. But there we go. We need the flat ones. I mean, the Sconset Bluff path we just talked about, the ones we're talking about is flat. So we absolutely need a certain stock of the flat ones. So I would say that's a priority to get ordered.
who was dealing with Neil for that stuff? Alan, were you working with him? This is a long time ago.
Yeah, that was, yeah, Neil Patterson actually donated those
Yeah.
monuments to the town. You know, it's crazy. They've got to be somewhere.
Probably to somebody's driveway.
Well, I don't know what they would do with them. I mean, they wouldn't want public ways.
Like it's a nice walk up to the door, though.
Flip them upside down, they got a nice base.
Yeah.
So what do you think? You know, you don't want to go to another business and say, hey, can you donate product to a multi-billion-dollar outfit here? Do we ask the DPW to order some? Do they want dimensions, or what do we do? Lee?
In general, we need to replace them. So steps. Alan, perhaps you can interact with Neil Patterson, see what Neil suggests. And if he says, no, I think this time around you have to buy them, then I think it's the role of our committee to authorize purchase if needed. And that's a motion. Authorize purchase of flush monuments if needed. And that would be after Alan determined with Neil Patterson what the need was.
So friendly revision to that, the motion would be to ask Alan to interact with Neil Patterson, find out the availability of that type of product. And if need be, we would put a rec in to the town to buy it. Does that sound reasonable?
And how
Yep.
many, determine how many we might need to order.
All right. So that was a motion by Lee. Do we have a second by
Second.
Second,
Ed? Any more discussion? All right,
Yeah.
great. Alan, you got discussion?
Yeah, just let me follow up on that. I will speak with Neil and see if we, see what we can arrange for the flush monuments. We do have 8 of the upright ones, and of those, 4 of them say public footpath on them. So I talked with the staff at the land bank. The land bank has acquired that section of what is it, Upper,
Westchester.
yeah,
Westchester, Alan.
Westchester Extension, thank you. So there are already 2 monuments, but they're both in. We put those inwards for a reason. That reason is now not there. So the land bank said they would be happy to put the public footpath monuments at each end of where you come in off of Wannacomet Road and right by the animal hospital right after they're pulled off of the parking lot. So those will take care of. The other upright ones, Lee and I had gone around to do a spotting trip of them. And there were, I believe, 2 of them along Hobart Avenue that we determined an upright monument. I think one was at Willard Street and the other one was at Henry Street. So, all right. So I'll follow up, as I say, with Neil, see if we can't find, get some more of those flush monuments. And it still bothers me that they are missing. I mean, yeah. Anyway.
Alan, one of our earlier minutes has my memo
Right.
where I relate you and me went out and looked. And at the bottom of the memo, there's a summary of what's needed. So with that, we can, I think it's 4 or maybe 6, not sure, of the flush monuments. But it's all there in that memo.
Right. Yeah, I
So-
remember that.
So a motion has been made and seconded for Alan to check with Neil Patterson. And if need be, we'll send in the rec order DPW to purchase the required amount. All in favor of that motion? Lee Saperstein,
Aye.
Ed Gillum,
Aye.
Matt Lowell,
aye,
Alan Reinhardt,
I,
and chair says aye. And then for this, I think we would need a motion to authorize Alan to release a couple of, I think you said the number was 2, a couple of the uprights to the land bank so that they would install them.
No, Bill, I don't think we need a motion because they would be placed according to our guidance from Roads and Right of Way.
Okay, I was just trying to keep track of what we do have, so.
Well, it'll be in the minutes that Alan will work with the land bank.
Okay. All right.
We've got Ed Gillum with his hand up.
Ed, sorry.
I have to excuse myself from the meeting. I need to, I have other things I have to do starting at 5 o'clock. So I just wanted to give you have your permission to exit the meeting.
All right, so
That'll end the meeting.
we're gonna be short a quorum. Because Rick had to leave also.
Hmm.
So I guess we'll have to table these other items until next month.
Is there something that we can quickly vote on?
Yeah, if you let me share my screen while Ed is packing up.
Okay,
It's down here someplace. There we go. I'm proposing, and Bill, we're happy to defer this till the next meeting, but I'm proposing that our website have some material about the proposed Harbor Walk. Nathan Porter will be drawing this up in a fashion that can go on our website. So my next step is to do a little summary of Harbor Walk, Chapter 91, just in 2 or 3 paragraphs to accompany this. There you go.
okay. All right, thank you. And the other items were about the Francis Street Beach, the lease, all of that. And just as an FYI, you saw the copy of the lease. The applicant or the person that had it last year clearly was in violation. The town did not see fit to change this lease. But I will be circulating some info with all of you. And I believe it's imperative that the roads and right of ways respond to the state of the current lease and the incorrect verbiage and the lack of the correct verbiage. So we'll just carry that over to next month. And in fairness to Bruce Mandel, he has a blurb that he sent out, which is a recap of the article for the bike path. So that will be on the town warrant. And unfortunately, we can't take a vote tonight to support it or anything because we're not gonna have a quorum. So unforeseen circumstance, but sorry about that, Bruce. Anything, everybody else before Ed bails? All right. Next meeting is Zoom, and I'll be sending out that when the time comes. Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Jerry, bye.
Good. See you guys. Okay.